Now, Brexit battles come to a head in the UK Parliament again today and on Wednesday, with clashes that could decide how much power legislators get to shape the final divorce deal. Some lawmakers within Theresa May's own party are warning privately that they could move to oust her. That's if Parliament votes this week to give itself the ability to force her back to the negotiating table rather than allowing Britain to leave the EU with no deal. She's also under pressure over how she plans to fund NHS or National Health Service spending, claiming yesterday it would be paid for through a, quote, Brexit dividend.
In 2023-24, there will be about £600 million a week in cash, more in cash, going into the NHS. Now, of course, we've got to fund that money. That will be through the Brexit dividend.
That's the Prime Minister Theresa May speaking on the BBC's Andrew Marr show, and of course that claim of the Brexit dividend has been questioned in a number of quarters. Lena Komoleva, Chief Economist and Managing Director at G+ Economics, still with us. Let's talk about the UK then, Lena. I got a chart here that shows the pound remains close to this year's lows on this ongoing political turmoil. We get these votes this week. We get the Bank of England on Thursday. We've had some house price data over the weekend that's been fairly negative. This could be a big week, could it, for the government, depending on how much power Parliament gets to shape the final deal?
I think it's difficult to overestimate the importance of this week's political events, because this is really a fight for the Brexit endgame. Depending on which way the vote goes, and nobody really knows because it's down to that 14 MPs margin, judging on last week's results. I think that this could have significant implications. If the Parliament were to prevail and to have a final say on the deal, that would in effect gold-plate the government's current position, although that position has yet to receive agreement from the EU and from the hardliners of Brexit on the Tory side, of a continued de facto membership of the UK after March of 2019 in the customs union, in the single market, which would, in order to, of course, satisfy the conditions in terms of Irish border, etc., which would be the best scenario for the markets. But of course, the vote could go another way, and that puts the risk of a non-negotiated hard Brexit back on the table.
Yes, and so we see two sides of her party. One side saying they could bring down the Prime Minister, another side saying they could bring down the government. So things look fractious, even just within her own party. If you point to the... Interesting that you point to some positives in this. You talk about the checks and balances in the UK's democratic system on show, or warts and all, but you point to them working. I mean, this is an incredibly stressful process, I imagine, but perhaps how it's supposed to be.
Yes, in the short term, actually, the fact that we have this political volatility is not a bad thing, because it shows, the struggle between the Parliament and the government, the executive, is a struggle to avert the most economically damaging of Brexit. What Parliament is saying is that, look, we're running out of time. There's a risk now that after 2 years, the government has struggled to gain EU agreement on the main points that it wants. It has struggled to make economic and political success, for want of a better term. You just have to look at the Irish question. We're still on sort of the first base in terms of how to make Brexit work for the economy and politically for the UK. And so I think the risk here is that it is in the incentive of this government to actually make Brexit happen, even if there's no deal, which could, of course, be economically devastating. This is why Parliament wants to have a say on the final deal. But, of course, if it doesn't get a say, then it will be a question of Parliament having maybe potentially to face a no-deal scenario or early elections and a Corbyn government. And what that will do for UK economic stability, I think the markets know.